People are always saying about the talk, and I talk, and I talk, and I talk, but guess fucking what? I back it up. I back it up.
You are listening to MMA Think Tank with Jay and Mike.
And welcome back to another episode of the MMA Think Tank podcast. And Mike and I are back. And Mike, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was pretty good, man. It was full of Frozen and football. Christy and I, we saw Frozen on Thanksgiving, the first time it came out in the theater, and it's now become a tradition to watch Frozen every Thanksgiving. But then because I'm a 100% red-blooded American male, I also have to watch football on Thanksgiving.
And plus, you got to wash off that you know the girliness with Frozen. You know, you got to pull your man card back. You got to put your man card back with the football.
That's right.
Yeah, I got to spend some time with the family, eat some good food, and it was all gravy. And there was gravy, matter of fact. So let's go on and let's talk about some fights here. Let's go ahead and recap a bunch of fights that have happened.
Fight Rewind.
Let's go ahead and start with UFC Fight Night 101, Mike. Let's go ahead and start with Derek Brunson versus Robert Whittaker.
I really liked that main event. I know it was a little bit sloppy at times with Brunson. But he did pay for it. You know, Whittaker by TKO in round one. But you know, Brunson had his moments early, but you know, he couldn't land the takedowns. You know, I liked he was trying to mix it up, even though he's more of a striker. But Whittaker in the end landed that right hook on Brunson while he was rushing in. It didn't end the fight, but it led finally to that right hand left head kick combo that was a TKO finish. Right after that, it was a beautiful finish. Yeah,
no. Definitely a great finish for Whittaker, and this guy is just, you know, he's on the rise. He's got like a 7-fight win streak now, I believe. The guy's looking great. Where do you say he goes from here? What happens next for Whittaker?
Well, I just did one story on Facebook before the podcast last night, and that was on this fight. He's actually, I think, 6 now wins, and although you're right, it could be 7. I'm not sure. But I think he goes with Anderson Silva. You look who's above him and who's below him. I don't think he should go behind, or I should say below him, but that does happen sometimes. But I think he goes Anderson Silva, who's ranked number 6. The top 5, I'd like to see him against a lot of the top 5 guys, like, you know, your Mousasi, Weidman, Romero, you know, Jacare, Rockhold, those guys. But they're hurt or they're already fighting. So I'd like to see Whittaker either fight Anderson Silva, or, you know what, put him in against when somebody gets hurt. I'd like to see him. I think he's game.
Yeah, I think so too. And you're right. I looked it up. He is on a 6-fight win streak. So you're right about that. I thought it was like around there. So anyway, yeah, he's looking good. And that would be a great matchup, I think, with Silva if that could happen, you know. But I think his star is rising, as you put it so eloquently on your Facebook article. So we should be seeing a lot of Whittaker in the future. That's for sure.
You know, Jay, do you think he's got enough shine though? I mean, I realize he just was main eventing this card that should have been Jacare and Luke Rockhold too. You know, I kind of judge cards sometimes by the post-fight not press conference, but the post-fight show. And you know, right after on Fox Sports 1, and Dana White wasn't there. The you know, it kind of moved forward. I think a lot of us hardcores, people that are listening out there to this show, of course, know Robert Whittaker. Know he's a Tough Nations, you know, winner, or Tough Smashes winner. Sorry. He's doing great, but I think they need to get him on a pay-per-view quick.
Yeah, true. But I think if he keeps smashing people, we're going to keep seeing him, and I think that star power will start to really shine and come out. So I think that he can do it if he keeps smashing people.
Yeah, for sure. And he's been doing it for a while, so I like Brunson as well, but Whitaker's a good dude as well. And I think really because they were kind of closely matched, I don't think Brunson falls that much farther down the ladder. It's too bad for him because he's not going to rise, obviously. But I still think, losing to a guy who's number 7 or number 8, I think he probably stays the same because really, like when we were talking about it, your top 5 are really good fighters. After the top 5, you have kind of a drop off. You've got Brunson, you've got Whitaker, but you've got Anderson Silva, end of his career. You've got Vitor Belfort, should retire. So I think Brunson kind of stays the course where he is.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So let's go ahead and move on, Mike, because we got a lot to talk about here. Let's go ahead and get back into this fight card here. We had Jake Matthews versus Andrew Holbrook. What'd you think about this fight, Mike?
You talked a little bit earlier, just a second ago, about how we need to move on and or quicker, and I agree. And this is, I'm just going to say really easily, Holbrook did win by split decision, 29-28 across the board. It was a fun back and forth fight on the feet and the mat for me. It was a close fight, at least to me. I could have went either way. So to me, it was just a fun fight. It showed how both guys are prospects. Maybe similar to how I view Whitaker and Brunson. They're in the same kind of class where they are, to each other. So since it was a split decision, just a good fight, and I'm excited to see where both go from here.
Yeah, me too. I echo the same thoughts there. Let's go ahead and get into UFC Fight Night 100. Of course, we had Ryan Bader against Little Nog. Man, this fight it pretty much went the way we thought it was going to go, with Bader winning. So if you want to talk about this fight a bit, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so Bader by TKO in round 3. It's funny. I thought it was a little earlier from, because this was on last week, but it was round 3. Big Nog landed some good shots on the feet. His boxing is his pedigree, but, Bader's strength in wrestling was just too much. I came away with, like you're saying, we kind of figured this was kind of how it was going to be. But I come away with it as Bader is still a top-ranked fighter, but as before, he's not a threat to the elite.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's sad too because Bader's one of those guys. When we first saw him come into the UFC, we thought, man, this big guy, he's a wrestler, he's a real strong guy. We thought more of him. We thought he was going to become something bigger, and he just hasn't panned out that way. And I don't know. So where do you see him going from here?
Well, he's lost to Johnson. He loses to a lot of guys that, that are on the top of the heap. He hasn't fought DC yet, and I'm certainly not calling for him to get a title shot against Daniel Cormier. But there's some bad blood there. Maybe if we do get what we'd like, which is Johnson beating Daniel Cormier, maybe the next fight will be Cormier and Bader. But I don't know. I just think you feed him another guy who's in the lower top 10 or unranked. And if he gets another win there, then maybe you move him up. But until he gets on more than a 2-fight win streak, I think you've got to spoon feed him a little more.
Yeah, I still don't even see him beating Cormier. You know what I'm saying?
Me neither. But there's just some bad blood there. That's the only reason.
It would be a fun fight. Yeah. Moving on from that, another fight we thought we pretty much guessed how it would pan out. Claudia Gadelha against Courtney Casey. This fight, we kind of knew this was going to happen, and I think we both called it, or at least you did, decision, right? For
I'm pretty sure
Gadelha.
I did,
Yeah. So I might have called it earlier than that. I'm not too sure. Don't remember.
I think I called it decision because I think Courtney Casey she showed how tough she is. That's why I didn't call it a decision. I knew she would lose, Jay. I knew that Courtney Casey would lose. It was 30-27 across the board for Gadelha. Gadelha was just a step ahead, proved what we already knew. Like you said, Casey's tough, but Gadelha is still one of the best strawweights today, man. She's only lost to the champ.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think she only loses to the champ from what I see right now in that division. I don't see her losing to anybody else.
Yeah, maybe a couple years from now when certain fighters are getting a little more into the game, maybe there's maybe there's some better fights down the line, but I agree.
I take that back. Maybe Carolina. She has a possibility of beating her. So who knows? We'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
UFC Fight Night 99, Mousasi versus Hall is the only fight that we really want to cover here, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's talk about that fight, Mike. What did you think about that?
Well, it pretty much went the way I thought the first fight was going to go. Mousasi by TKO at the end of round 1. Well, to be honest with you, Jay, I probably called it round 2 originally for the first fight. But, Mousasi proved he was the better fighter no matter, how you look at the first fight, whether you thought it was luck or you thought it was skill. I think it was a mix of both for Hall to get the first win. Look, he landed that kick. He timed it well. I'm not going to poo-poo that for sure. But, Mousasi didn't fall to that this time, pounded him out. And it's time to give Mousasi a top 5 fighter, man. Or I'll even be as vain as to say, a title shot if someone's injured.
Yeah.
He deserves it.
Yeah, I could totally see that. And I want to point out that I'm just getting over a sickness. So if my voice goes in and out, I apologize. But anyway, just trying to keep the show going. Bellator165, Mike, let's get into Henderson versus Chandler. This fight was, we called it, 100% called it. We thought it was going to go the distance and Chandler was going to pull it off. But man, the fight was very entertaining in my opinion. What do you think about it?
Well, I thought it was very, there were parts of it that were entertaining to me, but being a big Benson Henderson fan, I get very, anxious for him to fight more smart or a different way. And he did those in some of the rounds. So I did find the parts, of course, obviously some of the parts where he almost put Chandler away to be pretty awesome. And also Chandler had his moments too. But really quick though, and then you can jump in, 48-46, 46-48, 48-47 was split decision for Michael Chandler.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was a great fight. Henderson was surprised he lost. He had a clean face. Had a lot of gas left. Personally, maybe I beat up on my guys a little more than not my guys, but he should have used that, especially as Chandler was busted up after the fight, man.
Yeah, no, I know the way it looked was bad at the end for Chandler, but I still think he pulled it off. I gave it to Chandler as well. Yeah, I don't like it when guys at the end, if they lose a close fight and they start talking like, well, look at my face, I'm clean, and I've got a gas tank. Well, maybe you should have used that gas tank a little bit more then, I just don't like that kind of talk.
That's what angers me about him. It's kind of like, that's kind of what the look was on his face was like, what? Like, but like I said, you've got to just empty the gas tank. Jay, do you think it was a fight of the year candidate? A lot of people are talking about maybe that kind of worthy.
I thought it was really fun and entertaining, but no, not fight of the year for me.
Yeah, and to follow up on how you kind of not picked rounds, but how you saw the fight, I thought it was if it would have went to Henderson, I wouldn't have said too much about it because I thought a couple of the rounds were close.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a robbery.
Won one of the rounds outright, if I remember correct.
Yeah, I believe so too. It might have been maybe the second. There was one round where it looked like he won it outright. You're right, but it was a close fight, and if it would have went his way, I wouldn't have called robbery at all or anything like that.
It'll be interesting to see what Chandler does, how he handles himself from here on out now, because he got the win. It was a split decision, and he just beat one of the best fighters, best lightweight fighters in the game, but a guy that's hasn't looked super great at lightweight lately, to be honest with you. So I'm interested to see. And also with Henderson, he talked a few years ago about going into the armed forces. He talked about it most lately a week ago. So with this loss here, how much closer is he going to the armed forces? I know his dad was in the armed forces. So that's an interesting thing. You got someone like Korean Zombie. Sorry, guys. Korean Zombie, who's just getting out of the armed forces in South Korea, where you have to actually get drafted into it. And now you've got Benson Henderson, who actually just wants to go, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's pretty admirable. That's a cool thing if he does do something like that. He's not an old guy per se, but he's been in the fight game for a long time now, and the belts are just eluding him.
Yeah, I mean, think of how long he's been in the UFC, and you've got to remember he's been, in the WC for 3 or 4 years before the UFC.
Yeah.
It's just, I think it's that 10-year window that's caught up with him, and it could be, to be honest with you, it could be, training with the same people all the time and being the top dog in his gym. That hurts a lot of people. It hurt BJ Penn. It hurt Matt Hughes. It's hurt a lot of the greats. And I don't know if I would actually put Henderson up there with Hughes and and BJ Penn I think those guys were game changers. As much as I love Benson Henderson, still a great fighter. Hope he gets to the UFC Hall of Fame. But it happens to all the greats.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Well, good luck to Henderson and whatever he does next. But I just don't see the belt thing working out for him. Moving on from there, of course, we had Michael Page versus Gonzalez. This fight, it was kind of surprising to me, Mike. I didn't expect it to go to the distance. I thought Page was going to win it earlier. It didn't happen that way, but Page got a split decision from Gonzalez. So what did you think about that?
This fight was horrible, and I blame Michael Page.
Yeah.
He not look. I realize, Anderson Silva has that problem too sometimes of wanting to wait on his opponent and counter and stuff like that. But he needs to, if he's going to fight some of the best people, which he hasn't fought yet, he's going to have to learn to go after it too. Like you said, it was a split decision, 29-28, 27-30, 29-28. I don't really know who won that fight, Jay, but what I came away from it was, I don't think he's ready to fight the best, because if you look at how he fought, against Gonzalez and how he fought Cyborg up until he KO'd Cyborg in that KO from hell.
Yeah.
Cyborg was getting with him. He was hanging with him, and Gonzalez was now hanging with him. So those are veterans of the sport that I realize he did put Cyborg away, but I think he may not be as good as we think or as I think. But he's got to come out and really look good in his next fight, no matter who he fights.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That's why I said I was shocked with this fight. It didn't go the way I thought it would. I was expecting more of a killer in Page, and we didn't see that at all. And you're right. Maybe looking back at some of his fights, that's just not what he was all about to begin with. And maybe he doesn't have this killer instinct yet, and hopefully he'll pick it up soon, because I think if he does move forward more and maybe, start the exchanges more, I think that he'd have more success, and I think he would look great at doing so. So it's all up to Michael Page right now. It's in his hands. So we'll see what happens next, of course. And
he may finish fights faster.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Maybe he's gun shy for a reason. I don't know. I have no idea here.
We all, they all lay an egg once in a while in this sport. So for him to get, maybe this is one bad egg, and and he'll move on from there. Hopefully that's the case, because he's such a joy to watch, man, because it's not a guy who dances around and does nothing. He dances around and proves it. He's like, Conor McGregor, who of course we'll talk to, fairly soon. So about fairly soon.
Yeah. I wish we could talk to him fairly soon, but I don't think that's happening. Anyway, let's move on to a fight where a couple of guys didn't pull punches and were actually going after it, Mike. Let's move on to Bellator164, Douglas Lima versus Koreshkov. Mike, what did you think?
I thought it was a good fight. It didn't go the distance like their first fight, but Lima did get the knockout punch in round 3. It was a close round 1. Could have went either way. Koreshkov won round 2 with some solid ground and pound, but Lima, he proved that he did have an injury coming into their first bout by getting that KO in round 3. I don't know if I picked Lima or not, but whether I picked him or not, I think both these guys are really the top of the heap for the welterweight division. Douglas Lima I've always been impressed by him. He's so well-rounded and he's big for the division. His only loss for a while had been against Ben Askren. And Koreshkov, even though he got this loss here, I'm excited to see a rubber match. Maybe not, right now, but maybe a year or two down the line. Because I think, again, like I said, I think both these guys are just top of the heap of this division for them.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. They are the top 2 guys in that division. And Koreshkov, I was, shocked that Koreshkov didn't win this one, because I had him winning this fight. I thought he was going to KO Lima. Didn't happen. It was the other way around. But I'm sure Koreshkov will come back better and stronger next time.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's move on, Mike. You want to get into UFC205 now?
Yeah, let's just kind of. I say we just start from the bottom and go up to the top, since that'll be most of the discussion. All
right.
Khabib Nurmagomedov against Michael Johnson. Nurmagomedov, got the Kimura in round 3, of course. But Johnson, he lit Nurmagomedov up for the first half of round 1. I mean, on the feet. Then of course Nurmagomedov, he was having none of that anymore, took him down, and did so in each of the next 3 rounds, or next 2 rounds, delivering some solid ground and pound until he got that Kimura. Jay, it showed me that Khabib, if he does fight Conor McGregor, he better get the takedowns quick, because the stuff that was landed on him by Johnson, if that's McGregor, he's putting him to sleep.
100% with you there. You cannot deny that. I mean, Khabib is a strong, tough guy, but boxing is not his strong suit. He's all about taking you down and punishing you. Do I think he could do what he did to Johnson to Conor? Yes. I think if he takes Conor down, he's going to punish Conor. He's going to make him look silly. That said, though, all those punches he took at the beginning of the first round, well, all through the first round pretty much, there's no way he'd be able to take those from Conor. Just no way. And that really threw up red flags. I was watching the fight thinking about that. So I'm sure a lot of people were thinking about that at that time. But Conor, if his left hand connects, and we'll get into Conor later, but if it connects on Nurmagomedov, he's done.
Yeah, so I mean, this fight was pretty one-sided, with the exception of the first half of the first round. So I'll just go ahead and jump to, does he get the number one? Is he the contender now? The number one contender? Does he get the shot over Ferguson?
No.
Or do you want them to fight each other? I still look at it as Ferguson deserves it.
Yep.
He's been fighting longer.
Yep.
He's got the longer. Well, I can't say he got the longer streak, because Khabib's obviously undefeated, but I just still think you give it to Ferguson.
Yeah.
I know Nurmagomedov is not going to like it, but I also don't like what people are saying. Whenever there's two contenders that are close, have them fight each other. Why do you want to kill off another contender? There's no reason to kill off a contender. Give him Johnson. Give Conor, Ferguson, and after that, if Khabib wants to wait, I think he's earned it. Even though he's taken a lot of time off, he can wait and then fight.
Well, see, that's the thing. In my opinion, if you look at if you go by the records and you see, okay, well, Nurmagomedov's undefeated, maybe he deserves it. Well, Nurmagomedov fights like once every 3 years. I mean, the guy needs to put more fights in. He needs to put more fight time in. And let's face it, what Conor said is 100% correct about that. He said, look, let me check the numbers. Let me see. This guy hasn't fought very often, If he doesn't want to pick him based on that alone, guess what's going to happen, guys? He's not going to be fighting Conor, because Conor is getting to pick who the hell he wants to fight. It's going to happen that way. And the UFC is going to do it because he's a big draw. He's bringing in the money. It's all on Conor right now.
I think for the most part, you're right on that. I think the UFC may have just a little bit of word, but I do agree, and I know where you're coming from. The thing I have a problem with is that it goes along with what you're saying, but just to add a little bit more to it is, look, if this guy only gets, fights every couple of years, you don't want to put a belt around a guy like that. We had a problem with Dominic Cruz.
Yep.
And look, like we discussed already, Nurmagomedov can take, if he takes Conor down, he could finish the fight, but maybe he won't. Maybe Conor gets up and knocks him out. We just don't know. I don't think it's as cut as dry as, on the feet. Well, I do think it's as cut and dry that if Nurmagomedov can't take him down, it is over for Nurmagomedov. But we've seen Conor get up from
Chad Mendes.
Chad Mendes, thank you, sir. Chad Mendes before, and I think he might be able to get up here, because let's not forget how big Conor McGregor looks, man. Yep. He's huge.
Yeah, Conor and Nurmagomedov are both big guys for that division, and that's why I say it'll kind of equal itself out. I think they're both very capable in what they're good at, and I just think that you have to give it to Ferguson, though, because Ferguson has been fighting consecutively, more consistently, consistently. And Nurmagomedov's had too much time away. He needs a couple of more fights. I agree 100% with Conor. He needs to fight a couple of more times, be consistent, and then we can talk belt.
And let's not forget that Ferguson just beat, RDA, who was the former champ.
Exactly.
And the last thing I have really to talk about here, Jay, unless you have anything else, of course, for this fight, it's really about, well, it's all about Conor. He tends to do that to us. I agree, and I don't think Ferguson should get the shot, but I'm more interested in the Khabib fight with McGregor, because I think McGregor destroys, but I think he beats Ferguson, because on the feet, I just think that Conor's unstoppable.
Yeah. I would have to look at the reach of Ferguson and compare it to Connor's, but I just don't see Ferguson beating him on the feet. And anyway, without getting into too much Connor now, because we're going to get into Connor later,
Right.
I just have to say that Nurmagomedov is definitely a contender. This guy is going to be fighting for the belt soon, but I think Ferguson should be in line next. And that's about it.
Agreed.
And so let's go ahead and move on then and talk about Edgar versus Stevens. Now, this fight was pretty much the way we thought it was going to go, right?
Well, a little bit different for me, though. I mean, I do agree that I thought that it was probably going to go to decision. It was 30-27, 30-27, 29-28. I'm not sure about the 30-27 scorecard, but Edgar was just better all around like we thought. But Stevens, he let him off the hook. He had him hurting round 2, had him stumbling. And that's why I kind of gave it a 29-28 scorecard to Edgar. But like I said, Edgar just better all around. And, you're just not going to knock out Frankie Edgar, at least not yet.
Yeah,
so.
I think if anybody could, it would be Connor. Again, I don't know why we got to pull in Connor to the equation, but he's the only one that could do it. But we can't even talk about that anymore because he's no longer fighting at 145. Yeah, so let's go ahead and move on, Mike. Let's go ahead and talk about Pennington versus Tate.
Yeah, Pennington unanimous decision, 29-28, 30-27, 30-27. Pennington didn't work, Tate as bad as Nunez did, but she was ahead all the time. And it looked bad for Miesha Tate. Their last 2 fights, it looked really bad. I think because of that, she did retire. Obviously, she retired in the ring, maybe for the best, Jay. Maybe, she's been doing this a long time. She's still got a good head on her shoulders. She can be behind the desk for all the pre and post fight shows. I think it's a good move on her part. If she doesn't think she doesn't think she has it anymore, there's no reason to keep fighting when you're a pioneer. You've done it all. I'm sure you have enough money in the bank, and you'll continue to have a job.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what Dana told her. Especially, I heard after the fight, Dana was telling her to go to the hospital, and she didn't want to go. And he kept saying, no, you need to go to the hospital. And she was like, hey, you're not my boss anymore. And he was like, Miesha, I'll give you another job. Now I'm your boss. Go to the hospital. So they're going to take care of her, of course. She's been a pioneer in this women's MMA for quite some time, and she deserves it. They should give her a desk job or something. Or, I could see her doing interviews and stuff, sort of like Megan O'Leary. I could see her doing something like that.
Well, I'd like to see her kind of like Julie Kedzie does in Invicta
that too.
Also.
Yeah,
I mean, she would be great. Not just for women's fights, just in any fights in general, but because they like to kind of keep like fighters with like fighters, having a 3-man booth when it's a big, the next big fight is Nunez and Rousey, right? They're gonna plug her in right there for that fight and talk about how she's fought both of them and what do you think should happen here and stuff like that. And I know we don't talk about it too much, but I think I have said in the past I like 3-man booths. Not all the time, but when they're needed or there's something that can be learned from it, I'm for it, and I think that's where she would get a lot of a use.
I'm good with three people, at the desk there talking about the fights during the fight. If Joe Rogan is not one of them, I'm good with that.
Oh, I see. You'd rather have 2 with Joe Rogan, but if Joe Rogan's not there, you want 3.
Yeah, because I can listen to Joe talk about the fights all night, and it's great. But some of these other guys, sometimes they don't have too much to say, and a third person might just fill in that void. Exactly.
So just really quick as we move on, Miesha Tate, former Strikeforce champ, now former UFC champ. One of my favorite fighters, my first favorite women's fighter, from Miesha Takedown Tate to Miesha Cupcake Tate. I've been a fan, and I'll miss her fighting, but good for her moving on.
Yeah, I echo that too. She was a good fighter and fun to watch, and hopefully all we can do now is just hope for the best for her.
Yeah.
So moving on, Mike, let's go ahead and talk about Romero versus Weidman. Now this fight was just insane. This was a fantastic fight, especially if you're a Romero fan. This was an amazing fight.
Yeah, I'm a Weidman fan, but this was one of those fights that, you know what, my fighter fought the way I thought he should have fought, and he still came up short. And I have no complaints here. For Weidman losing, I have no complaints. For me, in general, I mean, look, it was a close fight, but that TKO in round 3 from that jumping knee, that was impressive by Romero, man. It was super impressive. It was close until that point, and that just put the wind out of my sails for the rest of the night, though, because that was the second fight on the main card, and with my girl retiring and then this happening, it was rough. What are your thoughts, Jay?
Yeah, I loved this card. This card was awesome to me, and even though I like these two fighters, but for me, this fight kind of got a scary moment there. I think it was in between rounds of 1 and 2, where Romero was standing there, and you see Weidman like pointing over there, and I'm like, oh, what is Romero doing now? And it shows Romero getting dumped on by all kinds of water. Right. And then they start, having to wipe it up, and I'm like, oh no, is this another stool gate? Are they going to take their time and wipe him down and give him extra time to recover or whatever? Right. It was just annoying, and this kind of stuff, this really didn't play a big role in this fight, but that kind of little stuff is really annoying about Romero in his corner.
Right, exactly.
And that's got to stop.
They know what's going on. I guarantee it. They learned from the last fight against Tim Kennedy that, the last fight I guess is Jacare, but before that was Stoolgate with Kennedy. They knew they saw how far they could get away with that. They knew they can't do that again, so they did the bucket of water over him and wipe him down and give him the extra 10-15 seconds. It's bad news. I don't like it, but like you said, it wasn't as bad. But he got fined for walking out of the ring and doing the goose step and all that stuff. Not for doing the goose step per se, but just walking around and stuff like that. But I found kind of odd.
Yeah,
I don't think that Jose Aldo, when he ran into the crowd after he knocked out Mendez the first time, I don't think he got fined. But then again, that's Brazil. Maybe it's a different athletic commission.
Well, and you got to look at what Aldo did with his celebration compared to Romero's. Romero's was really odd. Like, Aldo was out there celebrating with his people, and Romero was goose-stepping around the octagon. Like, what was that about? Like, it was just weird to me. Just odd.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Romero, number 1 contender for sure, I guess.
Yeah. You have to say so now. I mean, what are you going to – I mean, he just demolished Weidman,
Yeah. And he beat Jacare, even though I believe I and just about everybody else thought that Jacare won that fight. So I think, and I know that Bisping kind of doesn't want to fight him because he's a cheater, but he's going to have to. Bisping kills him.
Yeah, Bisping doesn't want to fight him because Bisping's going to get demolished.
The only thing I can see Bisping doing, I know we're jumping ahead just a little bit, but there's not much more to talk about with this fight, I guess, is that if he can stick and move and win the decision. And I think it's a good chance of doing that. But if he gets onto the ground, man, I think it might be over and over fast.
Here's what impressed me about Romero against Weidman, though. It was the fact that he actually had a lot of stamina this time. He had a gas tank.
Yeah.
And that is scary. So I don't know if the stick and move thing is going to work for Bisping. I'm not saying that so he'll knock out his stamina, just so he can just win up on points. No, I know, I got you, but I could see Romero doing a flying knee to Bisping's right eye or something,
mess up the other eye.
Who knows? It's just crazy. Romero looked like a scary dude.
Yeah, he looks almost unbeatable. Someone who didn't look as unbeatable as we've seen in the past, Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She did beat Karolina Kowalkiewicz. She won by decision 49-46. Joanna proved to be the better striker and fighter, kind of like we thought would happen.
Yep.
But Karina did have her against the octagon hurt in round 4 and couldn't put her away. But she was obviously there to fight, and it was it could have been a little bit more, for me, more of an exciting fight. But I tell you what, that round 4, when that happened, I jumped up out of my seat a little bit.
See, I disagree with you on this fight. I think this fight was one of the most exciting fights of the night. It was awesome. I thought these Polish girls stole the show at that time. They stole the show. They were just going at it, and Karolina was game like I knew she would be. Karolina is one of my new favorite women's fighters. She's
really?
Awesome to watch. I like watching her fight, just as I do Joanna. But Joanna, of course, she's a little bit more technical. She's got a little bit more skill, stronger, and I think that's what paid off here. Karolina, though, she can come back later and give her a run for her money again, because she did that night.
Yeah, I think that because the scorecard was kind of lopsided at 49-46 across the board. You know, even though Carolina did hurt her in round 4, I think you give maybe Carolina 2 more fights, and if she finishes those fights or looks good in all those fights, because she rarely finishes people, I think you give her another rematch. They gave Gedalia a rematch.
Well, Joanna rarely finishes people too.
Yeah, as last few ones have been like that now. So
yeah, but great fight.
Again, Jacek, she's already beat Gedalia twice. There's really nobody that I can think of right now waiting in the wings for her. You always got to fight whoever is really the next person anyway. I'm going to cheat out there, guys, and I'm going to look and see who's in the division, because maybe you're screaming right now, hey, she should fight this person.
It sucks.
I can't think of anybody.
Yeah, it sucks right now because she's in a division where Gedalia and Carolina are the top 2 girls underneath her,
Yeah.
Who else is she going to fight?
Here it is, Jay. Carla Esparza is the next person below those 2.
Yeah, the Cookie Monster ain't going to do anything.
She was destroyed by, for the belt. Rose Namajunas, who just took a loss. Jessica Andrade, Tisha Torres, Joanne Calderwood, Paige Van Zandt.
Rose took a loss, yes, but I think Rose, she can come back, and she's a good fighter. She's a really good fighter. I could see her, moving on up, but she needs a couple of fights before she's going to fight for the belt.
I think Namajunas and Paige Van Zandt has the best chances to get in there next. Paige Van Zandt, I think, needs to earn a little bit more, but when you've got a division that, you need to put somebody in there, because no one really is the most deserving. They might put Paige Van Zandt in there because she's popular, but like we just discussed, Rose Namajunas, give her 1 or 2 more wins, and I think they can show us that fight.
Yep, I agree. You want to move on to Woodley?
Yeah. Tyron Woodley defeated no, he didn't defeat. It was a draw. Sorry.
Yeah.
Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, majority draw, 47-47, 47-47, 48-47 Woodley. I had Wonderboy winning 3 rounds, Jay, but Woodley did hurt him bad and almost got the choke in round 4. Overall, both guys, they let me down, and to me was kind of a boring fight, with the exception of seeing how amazing Wonderboy looked getting out of those chokes. I know a lot of people loved it. I'm in the minority. I say that. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
And I've discussed it with a lot of people outside of Jay and a few of my other friends, and most people liked it. I only found a couple people who weren't really into it, but Jay, I know you really loved it, so go ahead and let go.
Yeah, I liked the fight a lot. I thought it was very entertaining, but I do agree with you on one thing. I think that Wonderboy pulled his punches a little too much. I think he should let go more often, because I think he could have taken Woodley out. I really do. I still think he could take Woodley out. I still thought that he won the fight also. I thought that Wonderboy won this fight. I had him 3-2. And I didn't see, even though he was almost choked out, I didn't see that as a 10-8 round at all. To me, it was still a 10-9 round. So I don't know. I don't know what the judges were scoring exactly, but a draw is fine to me, if anything. I would take the draw.
I hear you on that, and I agree that a draw is fine, but there's no way you give it to Woodley. It's either a draw or Wonderboy.
Yes, exactly.
How do you give it to Woodley?
That's
Woodley's
what I'm saying.
10-8. If you called it a 10-8, that would give Woodley the draw. But how you give Woodley 48-47? And by the way, I was screaming bloody murder when they said the score and they said that it was a split decision for Woodley. I was like, it's a majority draw. What are you doing?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yep.
And finally, they fixed it. But yeah, and I did tell you earlier, well, as soon as the fight was over, that I thought Wonderboy did pull his punches. And when both guys are at a point where they need to be, whether it's Wonderboy pushing, Woodley up against the fence and getting ready to unload, or even Woodley, who now has the range in his favor by being closer. They both didn't let loose as much as they did, and that's why people, they talk about it being a chess match. I'm cool with a chess match as long as I get a checkmate, because if I don't get a checkmate, it's just not as entertaining for me. And I bring up a previous fight now, which is the Matt Brown and Damian Maia. I know you and I think differently on that fight. You didn't like it, and I liked it, but only because Maia got the finish. If Maia would have done that for 3 rounds and didn't get the finish, I'd have been like, that fight was not very good. And that's kind of my thoughts on this fight.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a great fight. I found it exciting. And didn't go Wonder Boy's way the way I thought it should have. But I'll take a majority, draw. I'll take it.
It's shown better for Wonder Boy in this fight because he went through some adversity, came out the other end looking better, and Woodley didn't look as good in this fight. He couldn't put him away, and he was gun shy for a guy that knocked out Robbie Lawler with one punch. And the immediate rematch has to be done.
Yeah,
for the people out there who are saying, I'm tired of immediate rematches, I am too. But usually they're not warranted, and this one is warranted.
Yep, you have a majority draw, and arguably a guy who should have won, being the contender. This screams rematch, So I agree. All right, let's move on to the main event here, Mike. Let's talk about Conor McGregor versus Eddie Alvarez. You and I had it completely wrong when we called this fight the last podcast. Mike, I'm now back into this whole Conor McGregor mystique. I'm back with this he can do no wrong now. Like everybody was once mystified by at the beginning. We didn't know. We all thought that Conor was going to beat everybody and anybody, and now that's back. That's back for me, and that's back for a lot of people. I'm hearing a lot of people say the same thing, that Conor brought it back. So, man, he destroyed Alvarez, Mike.
Let me just, before you go on, say that I agree with McGregor in his new amendment to what he's been saying. His new amendment to what he's been saying now is that if you're the same size as me, have the same reach or whatever, I'm going to destroy you. I believe that.
I do too.
I think if he goes up at 170 and fights again, I think he'll have some problems with Woodley and Wonder Boy and stuff like that. I'm not saying he loses those fights. I think it'd be good fights, but I think he has a problem. But him going to 170 when he shouldn't have, and let's be honest, he didn't want to go to 170. Remember, guys, he was just going to fight for the title at 155 with RDA before RDA got hurt, and it was because of nobody wanted to fight him then that Diaz, got the cojones, I'll say, and say, yeah, I'll fight him, but I'm going to fight him at 170. So, Conor didn't want to fight at 170. It just ended up that way. And then, of course, when he lost, being the kind of guy that Conor is, he had to have that rematch at 170. I don't see him going to 170 after this fight. But
isn't that crazy for us to even say, oh, but if he goes to 170, some guys will give him some problems. This guy is a guy who started out at a 145 pounder.
Exactly.
And we're discussing this like, oh yeah, he can do well there, but some guys are going to. It's crazy. It's crazy. This guy he goes into 170 at 169 without losing weight.
Yeah.
So that tells you that this guy is not a 170 pounder fighter. It's insane to me. These guys that are fighting at 170, they're probably walking around at almost 200 pounds.
Right. I agree. And let me get back real quick to just throw the stats out there. McGregor got the KO in round 2. It was such a beating that after I watched the first time, I thought it was a round 1, but it was round 2. I was surprised it made it to the second after all those knockdowns. I think there was 3 knockdowns in round 1.
Yep.
Now here's the key thing I want to talk about, just for me and you at least, Jay, and some of the people who picked Alvarez. And it goes back to Weidman Romero. I was fine with the way Romero won because Weidman fought the way I thought he should have to win and lost. Now, Alvarez said he didn't stick to the game plan, which was kicks and wrestling. And that's why I picked him.
Yep.
And if I knew he wasn't going to do that, then I wouldn't have picked him. I would have picked McGregor. But even having said that, I think we all have to remember that one of the strengths Conor McGregor has is his mental game.
Yep.
That's mental, not just belief in himself, but getting you off your game. And I don't know, maybe even if Alvarez would have shot in earlier, because he shot in a couple times, but after getting blasted, it may still would have come to nothing. Conor McGregor still may have won this fight. But that says something, man. Yeah,
it says something that, because for me, if you listen to our last podcast, when I picked Alvarez, I said that Alvarez wasn't, he didn't get confused or he wasn't sucked into this, whole mystique by Conor McGregor. He didn't get pulled into his shenanigans and games,
right.
He didn't play those head games. Boy, was I wrong, because Alvarez did get sucked into it during the fight. He got sucked into it. It's as plain as day. Here he is fighting a guy in Conor McGregor that's, beating him punch for punch. So he decides, well, I'm going to try to beat him up. And it didn't work that way. He got beat up. He tried to fight Conor's game. He tried to fight his game, and he lost.
And you can't do that. Only Nate Diaz can do that because of his chin.
And reach.
Well, yeah, I mean, the reach too. But, I mean, if you look at the first fight and really both the fights, Conor knocks him down in all the first 2 rounds bad. It's just that, man, he can take it. It's just insane.
Oh,
man.
yeah. Diaz has a chin like no other. The guy's only been KO'd by Thompson with a head kick, and then he was finished off after the head kick.
Yeah, and he still didn't go out. He was just, they stopped it. So.
Yeah, I heard an interview with John McCarthy the other day, and he was saying that Conor's just got something special. He said he's seen him in the ring several times now, and Conor's left punch is no joke. John gave him a lot of props and said this guy can beat up some 170-pounders. So
yeah, and I will say, as someone who is not a big fan of Conor McGregor, those of you guys out there who listen to the show for a while, I don't like him because he talks too much about money. But you know what? When he wins and he's dominant, he's great on the mic, and when he loses, he's humble, and I love that. And on the mic, when he said, I want to tell you, I've been saying a lot of things lately, and I just want to say, I'm not sorry for anything. That was so funny. I started laughing because the guy backed it up.
Yeah, because he basically, I think what he said was, I have to, I want to take this time to apologize to absolutely nobody,
Right.
And that was fantastic. It was hilarious. And it was like, what can you say to that? Even if you don't like the guy, you're like, he's right. I mean, he doesn't have to apologize to anybody. He just sat there and backed it up. Everything he talked about, he was going to mess up Alvarez. He was going to beat him up, knock him out. He did it.
Well, we've got more to talk about probably with Conor McGregor coming up here in the news corner. But Alvarez, before we move on, Jay, unless you got anything else too, Alvarez, I think, you give him another top 5 guy, see what happens from there on. But I hope the UFC doesn't forget about him because, he's still a great fighter. And right now, Conor McGregor is all in the brain. But I don't have a guy I can think of offhand that you give him unless you wait till, Ferguson or Nurmagomedov, depending who's not fighting for the title. But, you may drop down even further, to give him a
I think Nurmagomedov is a great fight. I think that's a great fight. Seriously. I think that'll be good. Alvarez versus Nurmagomedov.
But I will tell you this. Nate Diaz does not have a fight yet. And I'm pretty sure he said he's not going to fight until the 3rd fight. I think if they give Nate Diaz Eddie Alvarez, and Nate Diaz beats Eddie Alvarez, the guy who was just formerly the champ, that gives us our trilogy fight with Diaz and McGregor, and it'll be at 155, which is where McGregor wants it and where I'd like to see it. And that's legitimate. I think that's pretty legitimate.
I'm going to say something kind of crazy here, but I think it makes a lot of sense to not only fans and the UFC for, monetary wise, but I think that Nate Diaz right now should have the pull to say, hey, I want to fight him for the belt, and they should give it to him right now.
Oh, so you're jumping the gun on.
Yes.
So you're saying don't even give him a fight like me.
Nope. Yep. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that he should have that pull. I mean, he's fought Conor twice at 170. He's pulled in a lot of money for the UFC. He's a big draw because he's that guy that's beat Conor McGregor.
Right.
That would be a huge, huge draw for that fight.
The problem I have with that, and it's not a big problem because it's actually a good idea, especially if the UFC wants to do it and they get the trilogy done earlier than what I want. But is that, are we now doing to the featherweight division, the lightweight division that was going on in the featherweight division? You have guys like Ferguson and Alvarez.
Yep.
Ferguson and Khabib that already need these shots.
Yep.
And now Diaz gets in front of them. So that's why I don't like that.
Unfortunately.
But I'm fine with it, Jay. I'm fine with what you're saying.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's the way of the game now. I mean, it's what you have to do sometimes to get the big draws, to get more people watching. Anything to grow this sport, I am down with. And if that's going to grow the sport, and I'm not trying to say that Ferguson doesn't deserve it, but
right.
Nate does too. I think in this situation, Nate does too, because of what he's been able to accomplish and beating Conor, I mean, the second fight, it's not like Nate Diaz didn't last the whole 5 rounds.
Well, I thought Nate Diaz won both fights.
Yeah, I did too.
But that was at 170 though. That was at 170. And that's the difference here for me. And I think it might actually hurt them a little bit if they were to do that, because something I've been worried about with the new changeover in ownership is when you get a new company, you want to make money now. You don't want to wait. And if we have too many times that people start jumping, over contenders because they're a bigger draw, that can happen with one fighter, maybe two, and Diaz might be that second fighter. But they got to watch out, because if we're going to start doing that, it comes the way of boxing and WWE and stuff like that. I realize WWE is fake, it's made up.
But here's the thing about boxing, though. Boxing still pulls in a lot of money, and it's because they do things like that. And I don't know. I think with Conor McGregor, you have to do some special and different things with his fights, because he's such a draw. I mean, his numbers, his pay-per-view, everything, he smashed it all. UFC205 was record numbers and gate, everything, just smashed it. So
I see what you're saying, because once the Diaz fight is done, the third fight, then there's no other like rival for him outside of Jose Aldo, right? So but for me, if you look at Nate Diaz, he's not a good lightweight. He's like 20-10. Okay, so overall he's not that great at lightweight. And so I don't like that happening, but I do understand where you're coming from. You strike while the iron is hot, as long as there's not a bunch of irons behind that iron.
Yeah,
so
I hear you.
I can go with that. I will say this. I prefer what I said, but I'm 100% okay with what you said.
Here's what you do then. You give Ferguson the next shot. He gets demolished by Conor. Let's just say he gets demolished by Conor, and then you get the Nate Diaz fight before Nurmagomedov. And
I just want Nate to get a win before he fights Conor for the title, and that
see, but then if he gets that, if he fights Nurmagomedov and gets demolished, then we'll never see that third fight with Conor.
But I don't want him to fight Nurmagomedov. I want him to fight Michael Chiesa. I want him to fight Francisco Trinaldo. I want him to fight Al Iaquinta. I want him to be the guy that he wins and comes in on a win to fight for the title.
Yeah, but that would suck. But see, you got to understand, there's a chance he could lose to these guys too. And that sucks. That sucks.
Quinton's a wrestler, I guess.
Yeah, that sucks if that happens,
All right, well, that's cool, man. I hear what you're saying.
Let's go ahead and move on, Mike. Let's go ahead and move on to some news then.
News Corner.
And by the way, guys out there, anything we talked about, you want to chime in, we're going to give the phone number at the end and everything. Give us what you think on all these great cards. John Jones, and he's going to end his 1-year suspension on July 7th of next year. Remember, he had that tainted pill, what he called, I'll just say a tainted Richard pill. I'll say that. So he's now going to be able to fight on July 7th of next year.
He was on PEDs. Just admit it, John.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I don't have much to talk about this. I just want to kind of like just talk, let people know about it if they're not following it. Next year is when we're going to see Jones fight. And all I want to see Jones fight is Anthony Johnson. So win or lose, give him Anthony Johnson. And, of course, because of this, Jones is no longer the interim champion, which was stupid to begin with.
Yeah. I gotta say something real quick about some fake news that's going around Facebook. My father-in-law comes up to me the other night and goes, "Hey, Jay, so why do you think Ronda Rousey got into that stuff?" And I'm like, "What?" I guess there's some news article going around Facebook. A lot of people are believing it, that Ronda Rousey got popped for PEDs and she's no longer fighting in December. That did not happen, guys, and that's just totally bogus. Don't believe everything on Facebook.
I look at MMA Junkie, MMA Fighting, four sites all the time, every hour of every day, 5 seconds before I go on here to talk to you about fights. Nothing's been on there. On reputable sites, I'm saying. Yeah,
and this was a couple of days ago, and I had to set them straight and say, hey, look, nothing that you read on Facebook, like most of the stuff that you read on Facebook, so-called news articles, I said, they're usually bogus.
Yeah.
So,
and just so you know, I don't think she's one of those people who would do that.
all right. What else you got for us?
This is just not much discussion on this, but just maybe we're gonna see what the new owners are, if this is a trend or not. But the UFC Super Bowl card is set for the host city this time in Houston, not Vegas. It's gonna be a fight night, not a pay-per-view. No matchups yet, but is this gonna be a new trend for the new owners? Because usually it's on the day before the Super Bowl in Vegas. It's usually a giant card. And this is the first time it's not a pay-per-view and it's a fight night. So I just found that very interesting. Any thoughts on that before we move on?
No.
Yeah. Okay. I have a problem either way with it, but I'm interested to see if that's a trend or not. Our old pal Shane Carwin returning now against Amir Ali Akbari at Risen World Grand Prix. Ali Akbari is 3-0, all KO TKOs, but he's been fighting in Asia. But he is a former Greco-Roman wrestling champ. So Shane Carwin, before he retired, he was a big wrestler, but had, with power in his hands. I'm excited to see Shane Carwin back. He is 40 years old. This other guy's younger. He's in his 30s. So hopefully Shane Carwin can run through this Grand Prix and get the Grand Prix belt. What do you think, Jay?
I don't think too much about Ryzen and the competition out there. So, you know what? Good luck to Shane, though. I liked him in the UFC. Unfortunately, him and the UFC don't see eye to eye. So, good luck to him.
Yeah, this is more about Shane Carwin. I agree than Risen. The only time I bring up, the foreign cards, foreign organizations is when big American fighters we know have re-signed there, like Vanderlei Silva and people like that. Big news for me and for you. We both love Cowboy and Matt Brown. That's been added to 206, UFC 206. Brown has lost 4 of his last 5. He got a win over Tim Means in the middle, but, sandwiched by losses to Lawler, Hendricks, and then before that, and then after, Damian Maia, Jake Ellenberger. The Ellenberger loss was fatal, Jay, to me. And Cowboy has just been on a tear. I think this is Cowboy all the way. But, I still love Matt Brown.
Yeah, me too.
Tarek Saffiedine now faces Dong Hyun Kim at UFC 207. That's after Brown was selected, of course, to face Cowboy. So Tarek Saffiedine is in now to fight Kim. I would much rather have seen the Matt Brown Dong Hyun Kim fight, but so be it. That's how they do it. For you guys that didn't follow Strikeforce too much, Saffiedine's former Strikeforce champ, 16-5 with 5 submissions and 1 KO TKO. And to be honest with you, if you don't know Kim too much, he's 21-3 and 1 with no contest, 9 KO TKOs and 2 submissions. He hasn't got a lot of big names. He's only lost to Maya, Condit, and Woodley. That's the cream of the crop. I'm going to go with Kim on this one, Jake. He's just too powerful. His wrestling, his grappling. He's a strong guy. Saffiedine's he's not a wimp, but I just think that's where it's going to be won. Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Until he loses to somebody that's not the top of the heap, man, like a Maya, Condit, or Woodley, I'm going to continue to pick Dong Hyun Kim. But those are just preliminary picks, obviously.
Yeah.
Lyoto Machida suspended 18 months for PEDs. That seems like a lot. He doesn't have a big history with it, but he did get 18 months from 2 years. I don't have much to say other than don't do PEDs, and you won't get you won't get any kind of suspension. But what do you got to say?
Just drink your urine, Machida, and you'll be okay.
Exactly. Make sure it's yours and not your father's, since they like to do it together. Our old friend Sam Alvey versus Nate Marquardt at UFC on Fox 23. That's going to be January 28th in Denver. Alvey 29-8 with 18 KO TKOs and 3 submissions on a 3-fight win streak. So Smiling Sam is on the rise again. Marquardt 37-14-2 with 16 submissions, 11 KO TKOs, also on a 3-fight win streak. Great matchmaking, in my opinion, man. Both guys are on the rise. Both are veterans. I'm going to go with Alvey here, not just because he's a friend of the show, but I just think he still has more left in the gas tank. And Marquardt, as well-rounded as he is, I think he's going to get caught by a big left or right by Alvey.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that too.
Jay's favorite fighter, Fedor Emelianenko, multiple fight deal with Bellator. He's going to fight Matt Mitrione at Bellator 170 in February. Okay. That's nice. I just want to see Fedor fight in UFC. If he's going to fight anywhere, he probably should have hung it up already.
You know what? If for you saying that Fedor is my favorite fighter, I'd have what I have to add to that is that Matt Mitrione, he would be more of my favorite fighter than Fedor Emelianenko. Okay, I don't like Fedor too much, and Matt, he's okay.
Yeah, you know, Matt Mitrione's got the 2 wins in a row by finish, but he was caught in that first fight, man, and Fedor could catch him with his speed. Fedor has a chance to win this fight. I'm going to lean Matt Mitrione, though. I just love it that Fedor walked out with the Fedor sweater on. If you don't understand what that means, guys, there's a brown striped kind of sweater that he wears a lot, and it's just known as the sweater. And he wore it walking down to be interviewed, and I just loved it as a well, I'm still a Fedor fan, I guess. I just think he should not be fighting anymore. But I digress. Rashad Evans, someone else we think should probably be done, Jay. Rashad Evans, he was pulled again against Tim Kennedy for UFC 206. He was pulled against Tim Kennedy in 205. They moved it over to 206, but now Toronto has pulled him, the Athletic Commission, because of something on his MRI. Not sure what's going on there, but Kelvin Gastelum has taken his place to fight Kennedy if the Athletic Commission okays it, because remember, Gastelum was already fined and suspended for missing the weight at 205 against Cowboy. Now, the only reason I can think, Jay, that they're thinking it's okay is because it's at 185 and not 170.
Yeah, okay. And that's where he should be fighting from now on. Gastelum he's just a big guy. He can't make 170 anymore.
I agree. Do you want to make a pick on this, Jay? I'm leaning Kennedy because it's been 2 years, I know, but he's just been looking jacked. He looks ready. Gastelum, I don't know where his head's at. So I'm going to go Kennedy here.
Yeah, based on those issues you brought up, I think Kennedy might pull this one off too, because Gastelum, we don't know where his head's at, especially after, that whole debacle with the weigh-in and everything. I'd go with Kennedy right now. Gotcha.
Another fight we got coming here, big one now, BJ Penn versus Yair Rodriguez. It's the main event of UFC Fight Night 103 in Phoenix. That's January 15th. If you're not too sure of Rodriguez is a top Latin American champ, 8-1 with 2 KO, TKOs, 1 submission. Really, of all the Penn's proposed opponents for his comeback, I like this matchup the best. This guy's, a younger guy. He's got skills. BJ Penn, a bit over the hill, but, training with Jackson. I like this matchup if we're going to have a matchup for BJ Penn.
Yeah, no comment.
Okay, we can move on from that. Aljamain Sterling is out of his bout with Rafael Assunção at UFC Fight Night 102. That's on December 9th. That's coming up. Due to an undisclosed injury, the UFC is still trying to find a replacement for Assunção, but so far, nothing's come to fruition. Another injury. A lot of injuries coming. The big one that you probably already heard about, Daniel Cormier out of UFC 206 main event with Anthony Johnson. Actually, we already talked about it a bit.
Please, No!
I agree. Michael Scott, I agree with your tormented nose. Because of a torn abductor tendon in his groin, main events been canceled, and Johnson will not fight. AKA strikes again, Jay. Yeah. AKA strikes again.
I'm tired of all these guys that are just getting, knocked out of fights because of injuries. These guys got to start sparring lighter or doing something different, more strength training, less sparring. I don't know what has to be done. It's getting tiresome, We've got all these great cards we see coming up, and then they just get unfolded by these injuries, and it sucks.
And AKA is the worst, man. It was Rockhold and now Cormier. Before that was Kane for a long time. And, Kane even said about how he switched up his training a little bit, and I don't think he's pulled out now in about a year and a half.
Well, yeah, I distinctly remember some of the lighter weight guys in AKA were sparring with Kane and these, heavyweights. It's like, what are you doing? What does that even prove?
Why is Luke Rockhold sparring with Cain Velasquez?
Yeah, it's just insane. Like, I don't understand it. They need to do something about that, though. These coaches need to get smarter.
Yeah. Well, that's good. What we just talked about there with the main event being canceled. We're going to Once we do the pick'em section coming up pretty soon, we'll jump back onto that thread. Patricky Pitbull Ferreira's out of Bellator 167 main event with Derek Campos due to an injury. That original main event was supposed to be Pat Curran fighting John Teixeira, and then Curran got hurt, and they moved this up. So it's not that great a fight. Not great of a fight anyway, in my opinion. But Campos is now off the card as well. So Darian Caldwell versus Joe Taimangelo is the rematch, is the new main event. I am interested in that fight though, and we're going to talk about that soon enough. But that rematch is a deserved rematch. And the last thing, a bit of news here. We've talked about it a little bit. Conor McGregor relinquished his featherweight belt. So interim champ Jose Aldo now declared official champ. UFC 206 bout between Max Holloway and Anthony Pettis is now main event, and for the interim title. Now, Jay, before you get in on this, I might want to say one quick thing, and then we can talk about this a little bit, of course. I don't understand the interim title for only one thing. If Max Holloway and Anthony Pettis is the main event, it's 5 rounds anyway. So there's two things here. One, they're making it an interim title because they want to somehow have a title at the end of the night. Which really means nothing, in my opinion. Yeah. Because you already just had the interim champ become the real champ now. I think, and this is just the way my head works, I think it's because Aldo may want to follow McGregor to 155 for a rematch. And if he does that, they will need an interim champ in Holloway or Pettis to become the champ if he then vacates his title and tries to follow McGregor to 155. What are your thoughts on that? Am I crazy? Am I right? Maybe. What do you think?
No, it's interesting, but I don't see. I don't think Aldo wants none of McGregor, to be honest. I really don't. I think.
I think he does, though.
I don't. That guy's going to get knocked out again.
Well, I certainly agree with that, but I think like what happened to him, he can't sit well with that. But I don't know the inner workings of his mind or what his heart is, but.
He'd be crazy to go up to 155 and face an even bigger McGregor. That'd be insane. Aldo, stick to 145. You can run all those guys out of there. I think that he'll still be a great champ at 145, but at 155, no. That ain't gonna happen.
I agree for the 145, be a great champ. The only guy I really want to see him fight is Max Holloway. He deserves it, and I really think it's a good shot at beating Aldo if that fight happens. But yeah, that's what we have for the news, people. So let's move on to just picking the fights.
We pick 'em.
Coming up on the 2nd and the 3rd of December, we've got Bellator 166 and Bellator 167. As we discussed a little bit earlier, the cards aren't that big. It's actually kind of a cool doubleheader idea for Friday and Saturday for Bellator. First time they've done that, but Bellator 166, Eduardo Dantas versus Joe Warren 2. That's the main event. I know that Warren took Dantas' belt the last time, but Warren's a little older now, and Dantas is in his prime. We've been talking about it for a while, Jay. I think Warren's last hurrah ends on Friday. Dantas he's too quick. Striking's better, but you can never count old man Warren's wrestling.
Yep.
You can't count it out.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Warren's going to lose this fight. But I've been saying that against Warren for quite some time now. And then he'll pull off a win, and I'm like, geez, well, old man, come on. You're killing me here.
And the other fight of note on that card is Marcos Galvão versus LC Davis. The only reason I bring that up is Galvão was just the champ, the bantamweight champ before he lost to Dantas in the last fight. And Davis, he's never looked that great in Bellator. He's kind of 500 after his fighting in the WEC. But and look, I know MMA math is a forbidden practice, but Davis lost to Warren in his last fight, and Galvão put Warren away. So I'm going Galvão as part of the reason why I'm picking Galvão.
And this is where sometimes we'll change our preliminary picks, because originally you had picked LC Davis, and now you're going Galvão. So you're with me on Galvão now. Galvão's going to win this
fight. Really? There
you
go.
Yeah. So sometimes we'll pick fighters, and then we'll really look into it and then go, okay, no, I'm picking this guy.
Yep. For sure, man. Thanks for keeping me straight on that. And Bellator 167, the next day on Saturday on the 3rd, Darian Caldwell. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay. Did you want to make a pick? You picking Galvão?
I'm picking Galvão. Yeah, I'm going Galvão.
Okay, sorry. I didn't want to keep running if you had something to say.
No, I was done.
Darian Caldwell versus Joe Taimangelo 2. If you guys remember, Caldwell was winning the first fight hands down until he fell like headlong into that choke in the beginning of round 3. I don't think that'll happen this time. Whether Taimangalo makes the weight or not, man, I think that Caldwell is going to get the win.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's going to redeem himself here in this one.
Let's see here. Tough 24 finale. Main event, of course, is Demetrius Johnson versus, well, currently it's TBD.
And it really doesn't matter who it is.
I was gonna say that, but I want to give just some shine to a couple of people that are right now who are we don't know. On Wednesday, we'll know at the end of the fight, or excuse me, at the end of the season. It's Titan FC champ Tim Elliott and Shudo champ Hiromasu Ogekubo. Elliott went 2-3 in the UFC, but has now defended his Titan belt twice. Hiromasu, he's a tough grappler. Both great fighters, but like you said, Jay, not going to beat Mighty Mouse. Be careful of the news out there. There is something that's out there that shows who actually is going to fight. I actually know who's going to fight, and I didn't want to know, but I'm not going to hint or anything. But I will just say that before we move on, that I've loved this season. It has been great. Jay, did you watch any of it?
Yeah, I did.
I liked it a lot. Maybe because they went a different way with different champs and some of the hijinks wasn't as big, but I really love Hiromasu Ogekubo. Think he's a great guy to watch. Tim Elliott's a good guy too. So I just want to end it with this topic here with just how much I liked this show. Yeah. But you're right, Jay. They're not going to beat Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, Mighty Mouse is just on another level. He's on like 2-3 levels above these guys, in my opinion. Mighty Mouse is pound for pound the best.
They could tag team against Mighty Mouse, and they wouldn't beat him. Then the other fight of note on that card, of course, is Joseph Benavidez versus Henry Cejudo. The coaches, look, man, no doubt that Cejudo has a wrestling advantage, but Benavidez is better everywhere else, and he's
Yeah, I'm going Benavidez.
I look at this, Jay. He's the long-standing flyweight champ in a parallel universe where Demetrius Johnson doesn't exist.
Yeah, that could be. Benavidez, I'm going with him. I think he might even TKO Cejudo.
That'd be interesting, man. I'd like to see that. He certainly does have that power.
But I think it would be late rounds.
Yeah, they certainly don't like each other, man, on that show. I don't think any of that's fake, man. I think that's all legitimate on the show. Then let's see. That was actually on Saturday as well, which is going to be along with that Bellator show. So get your DVRs ready, people. Then on the 9th, we've got UFC Fight Night 102. Derek Lewis versus Shamil Abdurakhimov. Did not know him when we talked about him signing for the fight, but I'll just say again, he's 17-3, 7 TKOs, and 4 submissions. He's 2-1 in the UFC, so he's a legitimate guy. Lewis is 16-4. I mean, you guys should know Lewis, obviously, Black Beast, but 16-4, 1 no contest, 14 TKOs, 1 submission, 9-2 in the UFC. Here's the crux of the matter, Jay. I'm still going Lewis, but both of Lewis's losses have been KOs to Mitrione and Sean Jordan. I know they're kind of early in Lewis's UFC career, but I bring that up to show that Shamil, he has a lot of KOs on his record, so it can happen. He can knock out Lewis, but I'm still going Lewis, and I might go early, man. I go round 1. You know, I rarely go round 1, Jay, but I'm going to stick my toe in the water. Yep, round 1.
Yeah, with these heavyweights, anything can happen. So round 1's not a bad pick there. I'm going to go round 2, Derek Lewis. Look
at the switch on us. And then that's really the only big fight on that UFC Fight Night 102. Moving to Bellator 168 on the 10th. Javier Carvalho versus Melvin Manhoff 2. Their first fight was horrible at Bellator 155. And I thought Manhoff won. Both guys were pretty much just walked around and were gun shy. My heart is with Manhoff. He deserved the title, but he's 40 and Carvalho's a killer, man. 10 KOs in his 13 wins. So I'm going Carvalho here, but I'm hoping for Manhoff.
Yeah, me too. Carvalho, hoping for Manhoff though.
The last card we're going to talk about is a pretty big one here. Not as big as UFC 206 was. As 205 was, but still pretty good, big. Even though we did lose our headliner of Cormier and Johnson, we have Cowboy Cerrone versus Matt Brown. That is going to be great. We kind of already talked about that, Jay. You have any more thing to talk about on that?
No, Cowboy. I got Cowboy winning this one.
Yeah, I think he's going to put I'll say this. I don't think that I said how he's going to do it. I think he's going to put Brown away. It's a 3-round fight. I think he'll put him away in the third by KO, TKO or something. The new main event, like we talked about, is Anthony Pettis versus Max Holloway, but we didn't talk about who we thought was going to win and how. So this is, for me, Jay, it's a close one. But, Holloway's been looking amazing in a 9-fight win streak. Wins over Ricardo Lamas, Jeremy Stevens, Charles Oliveira, Cub Swanson. And
went the distance with Conor McGregor. Don't forget.
Yeah, one of the few people, the only guy in the UFC, I believe, that's done that.
Well, besides Nate Diaz.
Yes, Diaz as well. Yeah. But it's always been his division, whereas Pettis is a newcomer. Yep. So I'm going to go with Holloway on that. Yeah. I think Holloway's boxing is going to get the win. Yeah,
and I think he's going to get a TKO here. I think he's going to, punch him, strike him, and get him to the ground and just make him turtle up or something.
I will tell you this, and just in case you want to change your pick, because sometimes you'll say something and I got to change my pick. I'm going Holloway by decision because Pettis has never been knocked out and he never gets finished.
I think Max is going to be the first to do it.
He's the first to do it? All right, my friend. I just want to make sure you had all that knowledge. Tim Kennedy versus Kelvin Gastelum. Obviously, we just talked about that a little bit as well. Still going Tim Kennedy. Any thoughts, Jay? Anything else there?
No. I think Kennedy, like we said earlier, because of the whole situation with Kelvin's head, we don't know where it's at.
Right. And that's again, if they're allowing to fight, which I certainly hope they do. Last fight to talk about, which to me could end up being a fight of the night candidate.
Yes,
Cub Swan versus Doo Ho Choi. Swanson's won 2 in a row since losing to Edgar and Holloway. No slouches there. Choi is 15-1 with 12 KO TKOs, 1 submission. Never been finished. 3-0 in the UFC, all by KO TKO. It's basically a well-rounded veteran versus a killer prospect.
Yes, going with the killer prospect, baby. Choi, I'm all about this kid.
Yeah, I'm going Choi with feeling, man. I feel this kid. I feel that this is going to. This guy's a special. Could be something special. If he beats Cub Swanson, we know he's almost there to becoming a real serious contender. But to do what he's done against, sure, guys that aren't big names, but to knock those 3 guys out in a row, and then if he finishes Cub Swanson, who's a great veteran, then for sure, Choi is going to be something special.
Yeah, I'm still excited. Win or lose here, even if he loses the Cub, I think he's still a great prospect, and he'll come back from it if that happens. But I think he's going to win this. I think he's going to do his thing, and he might. See, it's hard because Cub Swanson, being the vet that he is, and being as durable as he is.
And Jackson Winklejohn.
Yeah, I think that if he does finish this fight, I think it's going to be probably 3rd round.
If Choi finishes the fight, or
if Choi does.
Yeah, I don't think I did pick how it was going to go down. I did pick Choi, but yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with you, man, because I've seen his fights just once when you talked about him to me, and so I haven't looked at him since. So I'm going to go ahead and go with you on that. And that wraps up the We Pick 'em. We got a Fire of the Month, and then we're out of here, man.
Yeah.
Fighter of the Month.
You started last time, so I'll go ahead and start this Fighter of the Month. It's a no-brainer, and it's probably the same. I don't know if it is the same for you, but it's that one guy who brought back the mystique and that whole craziness. And the guy who pretty much...
I back it up.
He backs it up, and he's back, and of course he's won 2 belts. He's relinquished 1, but man, now he's the top 155er that I don't think is going to be dethroned anytime soon.
I 100% agree with you, my friend. We are in agreement. Conor McGregor. Look, Phil Davis got his first major MMA promotion belt at 163, Bellator 163. Happy for the guy. Douglas Lima gets the belt back from the man who took it. That's great. Mousasi gets revenge, but there's, you got to go with Conor McGregor. There's nothing. It's that big. And you said the mystique is back. It's not just the mystique for me. It's also I want to see. Well, mystique is part of this, I guess, but I want to see what's next. I want to see each fight. I want to see, what's gonna happen here? They're gonna have the press conference. What's gonna happen here? What's he gonna say there? It's back, like you said, and Conor McGregor, man, second to last guy to pick now for the year, and I wouldn't say he's a shoo-in, but a highly, I'll just put it this way. He could get my Fighter of the Year based off of this, but I'll have to really think about it.
Oh, he's definitely getting mine based off this.
Oh, you gotta let him, like,
No.
Hey,
you know what, guys? You're
let him
gonna
think
hear
about it.
You're gonna hear it early from me. That is my fighter of the year right there. Conor McGregor's won 2 belts. There's no way around it. That's my fighter of the year. So when we get to that, you're just gonna hear me echo that. I'll have some better words for it though.
I will say this then. It is going to be mine as well since you already came out. I was just hoping, not to string the listeners along because it's, it's kind of cut and dry. But the only thing I could think of that would be maybe if Ronda Rousey comes out and just puts a clinic on Nunez and puts her in an arm bar in under a minute after like she's been gone for like a year.
That is pretty interesting. Yes, that is pretty interesting. Because I am a big Rousey fan as well. But these two are such polarizing figures in the sport, and I just don't see anybody dethroning them anytime soon when it comes to that, And now Conor McGregor has won 2 belts and held it for a short time anyway, the 145 belt along with the 155, but man, the guy's he's doing his thing, and he's back. It's not that he's ever left, but he's really back now. Like, you're not going to pick against him now. Like, whoever it is, you're going to say, okay, well, I'm picking Conor till he loses.
Yeah.
That's the guy now.
It's like Mighty Mouse. It's like Jacek. Until they lose, we're not going to pick against them. So.
Exactly. All right, Mike. So that wraps up today's episode. Anything else you want to say? You want to talk about the Facebook?
Yeah, sure. Go to Facebook every day. I'm putting stuff up, doing different things that are popping off every day. I kind of put my stank on it, as the kids say, as well as just keeping everything going. So you guys have something to check out between shows. That's pretty much it. I know we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube. You can find us everywhere: iTunes, Stitcher. Tomorrow, I guess, Jay, I'll say that every Monday I do the Fight Week preview, and so I'll doing a kind of a written preview, more of a fleshed out thing for this week's fights, with more stats and more info. Yeah.
So check those out, guys, on Facebook. MMA Think Tank. Just pop it in there on Facebook. You'll find us, or you can go to MMAThinkTank.com and it'll pop up.
Yeah.
Also, our Twitter, of course, that you mentioned is MMA Think Tank PC. And that stands for podcast. And also our phone number is 925-237-1296. Give us a call. Let us know about what we've talked about on the show or anything you want to talk about mixed martial arts related. Or you can call us and tell us why we should change our pick for Fighter of the Year. Who knows? Yeah, you might persuade us.
And that's something that I really hope you guys out there will do, because the whole thing we haven't talked about in a while, Jay and I, but the reason it's MMA Think Tank is because we all want to get it together, talk about this stuff, think about the picks, think about where the sport's going, think about how it can be, who's right, who's wrong. We're all just want to be a big group talking about fights.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Mixed martial arts is something me and Mike like to talk about, and we'd like you guys to participate as well. So give us a call, email us at MMAThinkTank@gmail.com as well. Just let us know your thoughts, guys, and we appreciate you guys for listening.
Yeah, you guys have a great night.
We go.